Oi, mate. The fuck you mean I can't drive my cooler down halfway across the fucking town to pick up some more beers? The fuck you mean? I need a license for that. What? I thought I was in America. I'm fucking retarded, doggy. Either way. So yeah, you need a license for that. The idea that at every step of the way there is aspects or levels of government that will impede and or find themselves neatly situated between yourself and whatever desired result you were seeking to get. This is another one that I don't have much on, but a lot of this came from what tweet was it that I was looking at? I probably should have prepared that in advance. But it was a tweet where Elon Musk was talking about how he bought some nightclub, and in the purchasing of that nightclub, he was charging a fee. And that fee was covering basically the cost of running the nightclub and funding whatever business venture he was doing, right? And you know, it got me to think, like, there's no way in hell you could do that now, like, at all. At least something that I know here in Los Angeles is there's a certain number of liquor licenses, and only a certain amount can get distributed. Not much is ever given out. Like, I know for a fact there are people that get these licenses and then force other people to pay them to use the license for their business. There's like this weird level of obfuscation of how like people have situated themselves between right levels of how to operate a business. It's like, what the fuck? There's like, I don't know if that's nepotism or not, but it's crazy, right? You would never know that you could benefit from this if you didn't think about it. And then I'm not too sure if there's ever new liquor licenses that are ever distributed. There are distinctions between liquors, restaurants, and then like each certain city district center gets allotted a certain amount of these licenses. So you'd figure it out that, oh, the hood gets a fuck ton of them and other places don't really get them. And by these other places that don't really get them, like, it's delegated to, like, you know, bigger businesses like CVS, Walmart, and then isn't that like kind of like a centralization of power? Either way, yeah, the overhead cost and the start cost of like businesses, to me, they've, at least the way I look at it, for if you're a small business owner or if you're a business owner at all in America, there is so much of an overhead cost. Like, you can't build anything, you can't do anything. They've found all of the ways to squeeze out all of the form of income you would have gotten by running your business. Like, they'll squeeze every last drop out of you. And I kind of wonder if that's by design, because are they purposefully leaving not just me, not just you, not just any other business owner, all of us? Are they just leaving us gouged, making sure that there's a cap? Like, have they factored in what that overhead is in order for you, or in order for them to stagnate innovation as a whole, right? There is kind of a funny story that, again, I probably should have prepared, but I'm already running late. This is way too late. I don't even stay up this late. Conditions that lower income, profit margins, oversight committees, right? Oversight committees. How this then gets delegated to certain committees. Then you need to apply for certain licenses. You need to fill out special paperwork. You need to fill out certain requirements. You need certain qualifications. Like, I wouldn't even want to know what it's like to want to own like a business that sells food, packages it, sells it. Like, I wouldn't even want to know what that overhead is. Like, I remember, I I don't remember what was the product, green 80 something. But it was this. I basically heard somebody who went through the process of making his own dried vegetable. Um, it's like a dried powder. You put in water, you drink it, and it's really healthy for you. But he talked about how like it like the FDA had made it completely impossible for him to leave the recipe as he wanted it, and any other time that he went to a somebody who processes it or puts it in a packaging or whatever that process is called, anytime he went to any of these places, they wouldn't tell him that they started adding the ingredient that it's not required. It wasn't like, right, it says not required, but every packaging place he went to put it in that put it was like an ingredient that they kept putting into his product, that eventually he needed to find his own way to make sure that, like, okay, I need to make sure this does not end up in my product because it keeps fucking it up. So there's ways that, like, it's been obfuscated to such a degree that the government gets to control what ingredients get to go into things. I always like pointing to the fact that, like, European standards of food are completely different. Like, I remember somebody was comparing like their worst bag of Doritos to America's best bag of chips. The results were not pretty because, like, there is very few American products that can compare to that. But you got a license for that. You want to start your own business? You want to start your own thing and go against the government and the patriarchy? You can't do that. You got a license for that. And then they force you to sit in these boring committees, and they get you to, like, go through this entire process of paperwork and etc. etc. Oh yeah, innovation blockers. People like to kind of hearken or heart. I don't know. There is a lot of criticism. There is a lot of criticism that should be said about electric vehicles, but what should it be said about? I always think that we're never exploring the full depth of any argument, and as in, yes, that government can control electric car, but are we just never going to explore that capability? But then again, right, like, you get these various interest groups that have a fight in the stake, right? Like, you have families that want to make sure oil is being used, but you have a new wave of investors that kind of really heavily favor China and their decisions in Africa that want electric vehicles to prosper. I don't know. I see two very different opposing sides to this. But I'm just like, what if we could have the electric vehicles without all the hacking, without all the shutting down of the electric vehicle? But how would we get that, right? Like, oh well, how can we encrypt the internet to such a degree that nothing like that could happen? But I don't know. Those are ideas. Back to, you go to license for that. There's oversight committees, innovation blockers. I wrote a funny story that I had remembered. Oh, I wrote, there are safety protocols, but there is a fine line between being safe and brown nosing in every single little thing. And I just remember as a kid when I was in my mom's restaurant, like, the inspector came, something. Somebody had, like, somebody was getting something from somewhere, that they put a bag of potatoes on the floor for like a split second while they got something that was behind the bag of potatoes, and, like, the dude did not react well to that, and, like, my mom lost the grade. And that was, like, the first time that I learned, like, so just one little thing, government decides this, but then you get into, was it the person, was it the standards, was it him just deciding to pick a very particular moment where, because, like, I remember seeing the lady inside, like, the cupboard where the potatoes were. Like, I don't know. It was some trippy shit. But it shows you that, like, it's delegated to a license, an evaluation. some sort of paper that is given to you by government. Um, oh, right, and then does filing for copyright actually protect your ideas? I've heard a lot of horror. Well, I would say a lot, but I've heard horror stories of copyright infringement in the sense that they applied for copyright for whatever invention they had, and then all of a sudden, somewhere else, somebody else filed that same paperwork for patent work for that thing. And I'm not talking about Dr. Malone. I'm like talking about what was it? It was something that related to computers. Can't remember. Perkins Coy? No. It was something computer. Hewlett Packard. But essentially the story was this guy developed some shit, showed it to some company. The company, then it became like this whole race between him and the company. They had to file. Or no, I'm confusing Dr. Malone's story. I can't remember, but it was something that related to the motherboard. And he filed, but his was rejected. And just something that was like his work, just similar, was filed days later, and that was accepted. I don't know, now I feel like I should go look at these stories again. Because I remember there was like a lot of, I don't know. For me, it's kind of up in the air with copy infringement, right? Because the person who necessarily files for copyright is not necessarily the person who deserves credit for the invention. I'm going to point specifically at something like Gilead. Something that was a piece of software that was owned by Ghislaine Maxwell and her sister, and essentially it was like some form of a database. It was a database search query system for the FBI, Department of Justice, and the Department of, can't remember what else, but it was 3 departments specifically. They actually essentially developed the back end for all of their search results for their computer systems, but they bought out a company that did all of like the legwork. They bought out the company, then they sold the contract to the Pentagon, and then that's how they put themselves in the middle of the data stream for all of the, I don't know what you want to say, anything that had to go with the Department of Justice, the FBI, any of those data networks had to go through them and that piece of software. And when I think of copy infringement and that piece, right, you get, I don't know, I'm like getting lost in this woo-woo because I can't remember the original idea that I had on this about if you file for, I think it was the rocket, right? When somebody had asked Elon Musk, so do you think you're gonna file for copyright? With what government are you going to file copyright? Or did he said, do you plan on filing for copyright? This and that, and he's like, why would I do that? The people that I'm competing with are nations. Like, who's going to protect my intellectual property from other nations who have a stake in actually stealing my intellectual property, right? You get into that aspect of when you have the material that is integral to national security, or if it could gain any nation any favor to any capacity, like, hey, you're now something that is competing against government or aspects of government, so you become a liability to some degree, right? Because now it becomes a race to who's going to get this asset and who's going to benefit the most out of it. Kind of reminds me of a movie that I recently watched. It was like a black and white film, but it was essentially a guy who was getting a message from God, and then like you had the Jewish, like the people with the little black square. You had American Wall Street, and what was the third party? There were 3 parties that were all after this guy, but Wall Street was after him because they thought that they had figured out how they were influencing the market. Um, the Jewish people wanted him because he was getting a message from God. And it gets into this whole aspect of like, you become a target of all of these interest groups because you now are to some degree an asset. So you got a license for that. How do you operate when you yourself are competing against other nations? So an aspect of this is the water car guy, the guy who invented the first vehicle to run on water, at least more successfully in the sense that it could go for a very long distance with very little water. He was that guy, got killed, murdered, his invention stolen, and then a few years later, I can't remember what car manufacturer. Later, it's like, hey, we got a water car all of a sudden. And then there's another story that I remember very distinctly where there was a kid, literally a 12-year-old, made a fusion reactor in his bedroom. And the reason that struck me is because it gets into this whole idea of, you have a license for that? Well, it's not about having a fucking license for that at this point. Is how did a 12-year-old figure out the necessary components into creating a fusion reactor, let alone, right? One thing is getting the ingredients, the next thing is putting it together. But the fact that that was possible in a world where kind of everything is regulated to some degree, right? Can't just buy enriched uranium, you know what I'm saying? So it gets into this idea of, I feel like, not that I feel, I think, and I actually believe that there has been a variety of levels of overhead cost in making sure that you just can't do certain things. If you want to own a bar, if you want to open up a restaurant, if you want to open up a business, there's levels of overhead cost. I'm not saying that all of them should be done away with. I'm just saying that there is a degree of level that it becomes brown nosing, and then it becomes, I need you to just give me money because I'm going to tax you for this and that, and it comes into the question of, are these factors that are destroying the country? Are these things that are leading to stagnation? Are these healthy systems that either help induce the creation of the country or help destroy the country? And I always think about this because with the way things have turned out and with the way decisions have been made through this country's kind of course of history for the last 40 years, it goes to show that they've been trying to destroy it. They've taken away manufacturing. They've taken away I wouldn't even say that it had a cultural identity since the 1920s. I don't know. You get into very different levels of aspect of woo-woo, of how people have gotten caught up in this human experience, and they've been led to just kind of where we're at now. Now it's just become like everyone's induced with either some state of emotional dissonance or discord. Kind of funny, discord. I don't know. Getting caught up in, you got a license for that? Boy, is that a butter knife you have? You got a license for that? Get over here. Boy, what's all this then? Yeah. Right, I knock out 2 videos where I'm like hella detailed and I'm like hella good, and I'm like, yeah, but I didn't really have much on just needing a license for things, because it's just like, you know, like, think about it. When you own a car, right, you sign on to contracts in order for you to have this vehicle, get your license. Not your license. I mean, you get your insurance. You have to get an evaluation. You gotta get all this other shit. Like, yes, these are necessary responsibilities. I'm not saying that they're not, but I'm just saying that you have to, right? You have to sign these contracts. Then you need to first you need the license. Then you need to sign a contract in order for you to assure that you are insured against any cause of accidents, this and that. And just, I don't know, what forms of aspects of needing licenses helps and or impedes the development of a country? That's kind of where I'm at now with this thought process of, you know what I mean? Like, I remember the first time I said, like, hey, can I make, because we were putting motors on things, right? And one of the things I wanted to put a motor in, like an actual, like, you put gasoline in it, right? I wanted to put a motor on in a cooler because I had seen it somewhere before. And the person looked at me and was like, you can definitely not do that. Like, if you do that, like, you're breaking some specific Californian law and da 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 da, you would get in trouble. And like, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, this is America. If I wanted to put a motor inside of an ice cooler to drive somewhere to pick up beer, I should be able to do that. But apparently you can't do that. I was like, why? And they were like, well, some government official said so. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, I don't know. You get aspects of like brown nosing. And I remember very early on there was, what was it? The first Fast and the Furious, but I can't remember what year that movie came out. I don't know. Wanna look that up right now? Nah, I don't. Grow and hunt food is what we all should do. Anonymous. I think it's a little more than just hunting and growing. Was I? No, yeah, first Fast and the Furious, where you saw levels of, when Fast and the Furious took off, you had a lot of people who bought cars just for they wanted the look that these cars had in these movies. They wanted the lights, they wanted the black tint, they wanted to make sure they had the look. And what inevitably happened was you had a lot of brown nosing from government officials who were like, yo, you can't do that. You're being you're distracting too much on the road, this and that. And then they started putting speed bumps everywhere because people started racing, right? There was a response to it. And now we have a bunch of roads that have a bunch of, like, I don't know, was it a good idea? Who knows? I kind of want to see what the data sets look like with damaged cars versus the response of them putting speed bumps everywhere versus other places that didn't respond the same way because, you know, people were tricking out their cars. But it always gets into the aspect of somebody will want to put a meter on it. Somebody will want to find a way to attach a meter that'll just, ooh, look, the numbers go up. So that means I could charge people based on how much these numbers go up. Like, oh, you're making more money? Oh, you're in a new tax bracket? Oh, you live in a new location? Oh, what's your property like? Oh. I still think it's funny that people in California haven't figured out that the majority of why the gas here is much more expensive than usual is primarily because California has, like, I think like a $2 plus tax on, like, just gasoline as a whole. So I don't know. There's a lot of bureaucracy that likes to put itself in the middle and be like, well, we're doing this for the public good, you see. And people like to think that, like, oh, I could just ignore all this and, like, it doesn't matter. And I'm like, no, it does, because it provides a way for them to fund themselves. It provides a way for them to keep diverting money that they shouldn't necessarily have access to. It's like, just because it's a law doesn't mean it's a good thing. I remember somebody said that to somebody else, and they were like, it was so baffling to them that they had to tell them, like, just because the police are doing it doesn't mean that it's a good thing. And the other person was like, but what do you mean? The police do only good things. And it was just kind of like, okay, this thin blue line shit went way too far at that point in time. I don't remember what had happened, but like, I guess this person was making enough room for that argument in their head where they were just like, they forgot that even if they disagree with the people that are getting arrested or harassed or this or that, like, you should recognize that the cops doing that's not a good thing, because if you allow for that sort of exception, that exception will eventually become the standard, and that will then eventually be turned on you. But but I got a license for that. Why don't you just get a license for that? Like, oh, I definitely need to flesh out this idea more. It's also probably because I just did literally 2 other videos that I finished. You know, if I want to build the fusion reactor in my room, I feel like I should have the ability to build a fusion reactor in my room. If I wanna, then not me, right? If I want to like groom my kid to be the next Dexter, right? And he wants to build his own laboratory inside of his room and build a fusion reactor to power all of his crazy inventions, I think here in America, he should be allowed to do that. I think he should be allowed to explore all of the crazy business ventures that he'll try to figure out up until he tries to control the world. Then, you know what I mean? I'm definitely should not make a parallel to, like, all great fathers have to make very, very great sacrifices. And I was like, no, dude, not okay. No, don't even go there. That's literally what my brain was telling me. Yeah, you could tell that to some degree my thought process was impeded because the ingestions of substances were happened. But I just think it's funny how, like, people will just accept things for being the way. It's like, what do you mean? These things have been the way they've been forever. It should always be like this. And I'm like, It's like, we should give the DMV all of this money. We should give the DMV all of this money while they're still using computers that are hooked up to computers simulating another computer to connect to a computer system that's from the 1980s. Interesting. Shouldn't you, like, there are just pits, just giant pits where just money gets dumped into, and I'm like, wow. Yeah. It's kind of why people come into the argument that taxation is theft now. It's literally, okay, whatever. That was the end of this video. My name's Ramirez. Check out the Rabbit Hole Network. If you type in rabbithole.show, it'll take you to the YouTube. In any of the description boxes, you'll find the link tree. You'll find the Telegram group link there, maybe. If you join, find me. If you want to communicate with me, I do the news there. That's supposed to say frogbear.zil. First attempt at glitch art. I don't know what else to say. I'm going to bed now.